Welcome back. Now in this video we're going to be talking about how you can write a killer sales letter. We're going to be talking about some general considerations before we get into the basics of writing a sales letter. Now you're going to want to really master this process yourself because getting a copywriter could do this. It's probably going to cost you between $3,000 to $5,000, and that's probably going to have to be paid before you sell anything. And the higher the price of your product, the more convincing your offer is going to have to be to the customer. And so you are going to want to make sure that you have those key fundamental elements that we're going to be going over in this video in your sales copy. Now, the process really starts with a product that your customer just cannot do without. So really making sure that you've got a good product that's hitting the market, that's timed well, that the customer, you know that customers really do have a desire. That goes back to the research and the brainstorming process that we talked about earlier in the course. Now, your goal is to get people to buy now. Not just to buy, not to buy when they want to buy, but to buy right now. You want them to get involved with what you are offering. Now, you want to avoid fire sale pricing if possible. You want to price your product at the value that you were trying to communicate to the customer. Fire sale pricing doesn't make you credible to either buyers or affiliates, and quite frankly, it will start to diminish your brand. If you want to attract affiliates on a continual basis, that's going to be difficult if you're offering fire sale pricing. Now, in general, what you want to do is you want to make sure that your pricing ends in 7. That's generally what internet marketing pricing does, and that is what customers expect. And there is some science on why the 7 actually works in terms of how people read numbers from left to right. In general, digital products that you're going to be offering in internet marketing, particularly the make money online niche, you want to end them in a 7. Now, let's talk about these 8 basic principles that need to be inside of your copy anytime you're going to be writing a sales letter, or even if you have a sales letter written for you. You want to look for these 8 elements. Now, you're going to want to have a good headline, and we'll talk about what that means in a minute. You want to make sure that you have subheadlines throughout your copy. They actually break up the thought pattern. And when you look at the subheadlines, if you were to read the subheadlines all the way down through the sales copy, you'll find that they tell a story in and of themselves. Now, you want to make sure that you've got an introduction. Kind of gives people an idea of who you are and why you're presenting this product. You want to talk about, we're going to regurgitate. In other words, we really want to give the buyer the opportunity to see what it is that we're offering, and we want to see that they understand what this product is going to do relative to their problem. So we want to make sure that we are telling them that we understand their problem. We're setting them up to make sure that they know that we've made the connection. And we're going to present the solution. And of course, the solution then is going to be our product. Our product is the solution in context to their problem. Now, the other thing we want to do, we want to handle objections. Of course, there's several ways to do that. The classic way to do that is with testimonials. Of course, we want to be able to make sure that our testimonials offset all of a buyer's potential objections. Now, there are some other ways to do that. We'll talk about that here in a minute, but basically, you want those testimonials, you want that social proof, you want it to really give people the opportunity to say yes to you, and in order to do that, you've got to help them to overcome any potential objections that they have. And of course, you're going to have one or many calls to action. In other words, you want to make sure that you're telling the buyer, hey, this is what you need to do. You need to go to the buy button now. Handling them and really giving them specific directions as to what you want them to do. And of course, your sales letter can include often a PS, a postscript at the end of the letter. Web copy is really a personal letter. It's from one person to another. It's communicating to that person why it is that they should buy, who you are, and why it is, of course, as we said in the outset, why should they buy now? And so we want to make sure that the sales letter that we write does drive them to buy and buy now. So what about the headline? Well, the headline really is the most important part of the sales letter. And that headline is that first thing that they're going to read. It grabs them by the throat. And either the prospect continues to read or they click away and go someplace else. So you want to make sure that you grab their attention. Color is important. And there's a code there, and you want to take a look, and you want to make sure you use that bright, solid red that communicates to them, look at me. That headline screams, look at me first. And in general, there are several fonts that marketers use. In testing, in general, the font tends to be Tahoma, Myriad, WebPro, Impact, Arial, or sometimes even black. But regardless, you want to make sure that you are using, again, the font that marketers are going to be anticipating that says, hey, look at me and look at that headline. You want to make sure that that font is going to be about 30 to 36 point. Again, not overwhelmingly big, but big enough so that it stands out to the buyer when they come to the page. Start your headline with words like announcing, attention, an open letter, discover, or how to. All of those things really get their brain thinking and moving in the direction so that they will continue reading. You don't want them to come to your headline and be bored. You don't want them to come to your headline to decide they want to go someplace else and read other things. Now, another thing you want to do in your headline is to call on a specific audience. You want to say to all internet marketers, to men wanting to date women. You want to make sure that your headline speaks to someone specific in what it says and in how you say it. And of course, you want to address the headline, and you want it to address you, and you don't want to use general terms like you all. You want to say you. Remember, it's a personal letter. You want to promise a benefit in the headline and show specific results. Now, there are some other things that the headline really does need to have. We want to go over those things right now. Now, here's a bad headline. How to get the woman of your dreams. Now, it sounds like it's salesy, but it's really not. Really, it's generic. It doesn't say anything. It doesn't really call anybody to action. It doesn't really give anything specific. Now, here is how you might improve that. Here's how a 23-year-old goofy geek got phone numbers from 17 attractive girls in 1 week, and now he's about to spill the beans. Promises that benefit a specific result. You've got something there that grabs the reader by their throat. In your headline, you want to have a character. Notice how you've got a character in that headline. Goofy geek, right? Now, that's someone that even if you're not a goofy geek, you know who that person is. You can probably relate to that person. Now, you want to make sure that you have the headline that's going to speak to your prospect. Now, there is some science to making sure that you have your letters typed correctly. So make sure that your starting letters are in uppercase and the rest in lowercase. So don't do all caps, even though that might seem like it's really shouting and grabbing attention in internet speak. However, in a sales letter, you want to have just the starting letters in uppercase, and then the rest of the letters in lowercase. Now, sometimes a headline can also use a cliffhanger technique, and you'll see that being used in television, and you'll see that being used all over the place. And you basically want to give the reader just enough to make them curious. You don't want to tell them everything. You want to leave them, and you want to trail it off so that they've got to keep reading in order to find out what is in the rest of the sales letter. And of course, what you want to do in your copy is you want the headline to move them on. You want it to press their hot buttons. Now, what do I mean by hot buttons? Let's talk about that here for a minute. Here are your hot button words that you can use in your headline. Easy, fast, more, less, instant, right? New. All of these things are tested, time tested. Guarantee, proven, sexy, extra, bonus, original, safe. All of these things really do communicate to the buyer that they should keep reading, right? Certified, no risk, wanted, secret, limited time only. Use these words liberally in your headline and even throughout your copy also. Now let's move on to the subheadline, which comes right after the headline. And what the subheadline is really, it's a hook. All it does is you've grabbed their attention with the headline, and now you want them to keep reading, and the subheadline actually does that. And you're going to have a subheadline every few paragraphs in your sales letter. You want to make sure that it's smaller than the headline. So you want to make sure that it's not the very same thing as the headline. The headline, remember, grabs their attention, but the subheadline is important too, and it keeps their attention and it keeps them moving in their reading. Now, here's one of the most important parts of this headline. It's really for those people who scroll through the page, right? And so what it does is it catches them and it forces them to read that subheadline because it stands out from the rest of the text, even though it's not the same as the headline. Now, not everyone's going to read your subheadline. Now, when you look at all of the subheadlines together, if you read them one by one and you skip over the text, all those subheadlines should tell a story. Right? They should tell a story all by themselves and lead the buyer down the page. So now the third element is the introduction. Now in the introduction, you want to really qualify that prospect. You talk about his or her problems. You talk about what they are aspiring to. You make sure they know that you are relating to them. And you don't want to use dear friend. Okay, that's something that internet marketers have come to use and they have come to put in sales letters, but you want to avoid that. That really screams that your sales letter is insecure, is insincere, and that you haven't really thought through your prospect. You don't really know them all that well. Be specific also. Talk about it, dear frustrated marketer, or dear someone dear someone who wants to double their dating. Really get specific in your language when you do your introduction. Talk about them a little bit, right? Talk about yourself a little bit. Talk about how you have the same problem. Talk about how you can relate to what they're going to. Really establish that connection in your introduction, because the prospect is asking, who are you? And why should I listen to you? Now, we're going to move on to something that sounds slightly similar, but it is a necessary part of your sales letter. It's called regurgitation. And it really is this process of exaggerating the existing problem. You are going to make sure that your buyer knows that you understand what they're going through. Now, the reason that you're going to do that is because you're going to exaggerate the problem. Because a buyer understands their problem in exaggerated terms. They're thinking about the worst case scenario. And you are going to do the best you can to take them there visually and through your words. So now what you want to do in the regurgitation process, you want to introduce solutions to them, but these solutions are going to be inferior to what you are eventually going to offer. So, for example, if you were talking to an internet marketer, one solution would be to have someone, a professional, create a product for them. Let's say that your product was about product creation. You'd talk to them about how they could have someone create a product for them and do all the work for them, and talk about how much that would cost, right? And so you are always going to present a choice to them that's real, but one that is less than acceptable to them. So finally, once you have set the stage by exaggerating the problem, so they know you understand, they know you understand, you've made that connection with them because you've explained that problem in terms that they are seeing in their own life and in their own mind, you are going to present your solution. And you start out by saying introducing. Right? Introducing whatever your product name is. And then you want to start talking about the benefits. what does your product offer? What does your service offer? Now, when you have more than one component, right? When your product offers more than one key benefit, has more than one aspect, you want to use Johnson boxes. And they're little colored boxes that really highlight one particular aspect or one particular component of the product. You want to put each component inside of a Johnson box. Now, just in general, right? You want to take the benefit words and any result-oriented words, easy, fast, or twice the power. You want to take those words inside of your solution paragraph and just highlight them. And you highlight them by putting a little yellow highlighting, almost looks like a marker behind or on top of it, so that it looks like you have taken a yellow marker, a highlighter marker, and just made sure that the buyer understands easy and fast is key. This emphasis is also very important as you present the solution to them. And of course, we talked about this, you want to handle their objections. So you want to make sure that you understand all of the frequently asked questions of your buyer with respect to your product or service. So you want to take your testimonials, and those testimonials really should answer in detail those frequently asked questions. And if you have any endorsements from people, people that your buyer would know, you want to make sure those things are in there. Those endorsements really strengthen and they really add proof to the fact that your product does what you say it can do. And then what your guarantee does. You want to have a guarantee because the guarantee helps to remove their doubts. You want to make sure you take away their risk. There's some people who'd want to try your product and they want to try and make sure, they want to try it and see if it's for them. But you've got to take away the risk from them. And when possible, right, real life case studies are proof. Now there is social proof and then there is proof. Case studies provide scientific proof that your product works. This isn't necessarily always going to be someone who's willing to give you a testimonial. This is going to be the case study, scientific evidence that what you are offering actually works. Now remember, all throughout your sales letter, and it's important to emphasize this here, this is a one-way conversation, and that's why you need to go through this process of removing the doubts from your buyer. You got to take them through this, because if you remove their doubts, they will then make the effort to go ahead and buy. If your buyer has already read to this point in the sales letter, they probably want to buy, but you've got to take them that next step to remove their doubts so that they will then pull out their credit card or get into their PayPal account and keep buying. Now, in and throughout your sales letter, you should be giving your buyer a call to action. Tell them what the price is and tell them exactly what they need to do and tell them to do it now. You don't want them to leave your sales page and then to go and to think about something else they've got to do, or to go to work, or to start thinking about family. You want them to make the decision to buy. And one of the ways that you do that is inside your call to action is with your words. Paint the picture. Paint the picture and show them a future that they are going to have if they don't buy this product now. Tell them what their life is going to be like if they don't take action. Use the bonus here, right? Use the bonus as additional bait. In other words, that bonus is going to go away if they don't take action now. That actually gets into scarcity, but you want to make that part of the call to action. You're going to say the bonus is only going to be available for a little while longer. And now, this is actually, your postscript. P.S. Right? It's at the end of the sales letter. You've already ended. They've already seen the call to action. They've seen several call to action buttons. They've seen been given several opportunities to buy. But now at the end, you want to come back and you want to reemphasize. You want to talk about the hidden benefits. What is it that's hidden in this product that you didn't talk about? Something that maybe they didn't know about. Talk about a benefit and how their life is going to change if they take action now. Go back through and get those key phrases that really press them to make a decision now. Talk about the things that remove their doubts. And in that PS, maybe you had some testimonials that were not as strong as you'd like them to be, or they didn't necessarily remove doubts, or they didn't address objections. Well, you want to put them down there. Add them down there in the PS so that the buyer can see once again that someone has actually experienced the product and they like it, they're satisfied with it. Now, of course, you've probably seen it, and you can use multiple versions of PS. But now it's recommended that you only use 3. And 3 is probably the maximum that a buyer can really handle at any one time. And beyond that, it's probably going to be a little bit of overkill. Now, we have gone through the basic elements of writing sales copy. Now, what we want to do in the next video is to give you some qualitative factors to take these basics and to make them dynamic. So make sure these are the principles that must be in your sales letter. They must be there. But now we're going to talk about how you take those and how you really make them so that they move that buyer and make them take action. We're going to show you how to make that copy stand out and convert your buyer in the next video. So with that, thanks, and I will see you in that next video.